Just a few years ago, the Brooklyn Nets were 1 point away from advancing to the conference finals, with a chance to win their first ever NBA title. Fast forward to today, and they are the worst team in the NBA while being in full rebuild mode. So how did this happen? In this video, I'm going to take you through the dynasty that never started and how the biggest egos in the NBA ruined a shot at a championship. It all started in the 2019 offseason when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving decided to shock the world and sign with the Brooklyn Nets. This free agency move was completely unexpected, and the Nets overnight became the hottest team in the league. They now had two of the most prolific scorers in the league with a bunch of great role players to back them up. The only caveat to this situation would be Kevin Durant's broken Achilles and Kyrie suffering a similar fate. In the 20 games he appeared in during the 2019-20 season, he looked like the best version of himself, crossing up anyone who tried to defend him, getting to the rim and finishing like no other, while knocking down tough shots left and right. Unfortunately, Kyrie would suffer a knee injury and get surgery, which put him out for the remainder of the season. This was fine though, if I'm being honest. KD was never going to play this season, and the team wasn't really ready to compete with the other Eastern Conference contenders at the time. With this in mind, the Nets made a very interesting coaching move ahead of the 2020-21 season, hiring Steve Nash, one of the greatest point guards in NBA history. Nash was known for having an insanely high basketball IQ and is Kyrie Irving's godfather, which made the situation seem perfect. They hired a really smart basketball coach while keeping Kyrie happy and excited to suit up for the Nets every night. Many fans thought this would be the move that changed everything in Brooklyn, and that it did. The Nets looked different from here on out. With the acquisitions of LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin towards the end of the season, and DeAndre Jordan, the Nets were filled with Hall of Fame level talent by the end of the season, which is why their big move in January of 2021 was even more insane. After James Harden expressed a major desire to be traded from Houston, the Nets made their offer, and it went through. This meant that Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant were all playing on the same basketball team in their primes. Instantly, everyone was hopping on NBA 2K to see what this team would look like, and honestly, it really did look like something you'd only see in video games. Everyone was calling an NBA Finals matchup of Nets versus Lakers, and the hype around this team could not be higher. However, people failed to realize a few very important things. James Harden had been the best player on his team for over 9 years. Kyrie left Cleveland so he could be the best player on the team, and Durant had always been the best player on his respective team. Three #1 options, MVP caliber players, would have to share the ball with not only each other, but 7 to 8 other guys on the roster so they could win games. The egos were high, but the players swore to each other that they would put them aside for one goal: winning an NBA championship. Luckily for them, their odds of doing that could not have been higher. In February of 2021, FanDuel Sportsbook had the Nets at a plus 300 odds to win the NBA championship, just behind the Lakers, who sat at plus 270. We were watching an NBA Finals matchup be manifested by every fan and analyst ever since the Harden trade went through, but some major problems were already starting to form in Brooklyn. Number 1, they quite literally had the worst defense in the NBA, which played right into the narrative that Harden, Kyrie, and Durant don't play any defense. Looking back on it, that's probably why they never had the #1 odds to win a championship. But the Nets front office looked past all that and doubled down on offense to head into the playoffs as a 2 seed. The Nets were being hyped up to have the greatest big three in history of the league, with articles and media outlets saying that they could surpass the old Warriors big three for the title of the best ever. The stats backed it up too, with Harden, Durant, and Irving being responsible for over 80 points a night just in scoring, not even including the assists Harden and Irving were dishing out, and how their floor presence opened up the floor for role players to get in on the action. Everything went through these three core guys, and every team in the league knew it. The Nets had the depth, confidence, experience, and swagger to dominate any opponent that stood in their way. Every night was a highlight reel, and Nets tickets were selling at rates like never before. All of a sudden, 3 basketball players changed an entire franchise, fan base, and city. Everyone was hopping on the Nets bandwagon, and for the first time ever, Brooklyn ruled over New York City as the best basketball team around. The culture had completely shifted to something fresh, flashy, something that always made the lights brighter than anything we'd ever seen before. Unfortunately, this team would not live up to what everyone thought they were destined for. In round 1 of the 2021 playoffs, they dominated Boston and would be set up for their toughest opponent, the Milwaukee Bucks. After 2 games, Brooklyn looked unbeatable, despite Harden going going down with a hamstring injury 43 seconds into Game 1, the Nets ended up winning by 8, and then backed it up with a 40-point victory in Game 2 to take a commanding 2-0 lead heading into Milwaukee. This moment right here is when everything changed in the series. The Bucks won 2 games in a row, and the Nets lost Kyrie Irving for the rest of the series. But hey, at least they were going to get Harden back for a pivotal Game 5, or so they thought. When we think of James Harden, we think of a prolific playmaking scorer who can get to the rim, hit step-back threes, and dominate the game at all 3 levels. For the Nets to win a championship, they were going to need this level of production from Harden. With Irving out and everything on the line in this series with Milwaukee, the Nets now found themselves in a very strange situation. After being one of the best offensive teams all year, it wasn't defense that this team was aching for. It was offensive production from their various weapons. And when it mattered the most in Game 5, the Nets got extremely lucky that KD showed up. Durant would drop 49 points and 17 rebounds, which was one of the best playoff games of his life, to give the Nets a 3-2 lead, beating the Bucks by just 6 points. Despite the nice win, it took Jeff Green of all people to drop 27 points just for the Nets to even have a chance. This is because of the game that James Harden had. In his first game back from injury, he had 5 points and 8 assists on 10% shooting from the field and 0% from 3. This was one of the worst games Harden had ever played, and possibly the worst statistical performance from a superstar of all time. With Harden getting all the hate on social media and ESPN, he needed a massive bounce back game to redeem himself and get his team to the conference finals. However, this would not be the case, and Harden played with as little confidence as we'd ever seen. Despite not shooting the ball at a bad clip at all, it was the passiveness and the overthinking from him that had become the biggest issue. And with the Nets going back home for Game 7 because of Harden's new playstyle, the real test was underway. Everyone remembers this Game 7 because of the dramatic ending where Durant was one shoe size too big from hitting a game winner to eliminate the Bucks. And instead, the game went to overtime where they would ultimately lose. But what not many people mention is the game that James Harden had. For the 3rd night in a row, we saw a different version of James, and not in a good way. He would go on to shoot 5 for 17 from the field and 2 for 12 from 3-point range in an elimination game, which by every standard is unacceptable. It didn't even matter that he dished out 9 assists because he was just chucking threes at the rim with no accountability whatsoever. Now, there's a point I'm getting at here that you may not have realized just yet. All of this plays into the ego issue that was always the real problem on the Nets. Harden really thought that in Game 7 of this series, he was going to magically turn back the clock to his MVP days and carry his team to victory, while KD would be the only one actually capable of doing this. Because of this series alone, the Nets would face a troubling situation going into the next season, and this moment right here is where the egos hit their absolutely worst moment. When 3 NBA superstars who have already and still want to lead their own teams to a championship come together with the idea of putting their own egos aside to build a super team, it never actually works. Eventually, something happens that ends their will to keep it going. Injury, age, arguments, and ring chasing are some of the most common reasons why super teams split up. However, what makes Brooklyn so interesting is that it wasn't just a combination of everything. It was the greed of the superstars. The very next season, it was clear that the Harden deal had not worked out, and he was not the same player that had once scorched the NBA with step-back threes and tough layups. With that in mind, the Nets traded him to the 76ers for Ben Simmons and a bag of chips. Simmons was already having drama of his own in Philadelphia, which added even more ego and chemistry issues to a team that was already headed downhill. The Nets got significantly worse in this year, finishing 7th in the East and being swept by the Boston Celtics in round 1, while Kyrie was booed and heckled by the Boston fans, adding insult to injury for him especially. The result of this was unprecedented. By the 2022-23 season, Durant and Irving had requested trades that would land them to contending teams where they would get the attention and spotlight, leaving the Brooklyn Project with anger, regret, and egos that would never be repaired. In just a few years, these 3 guys completely ruined their fan base, a franchise, and the future of the team. The Nets would go on to enter rebuild mode and trade away quite literally every asset they still had for draft picks, while the Big 3 searched for a ring on other teams. It was surreal to witness as an NBA fan, the drama, the ups and downs, the trade requests, and the confusion that came from the whole situation. But are you really all that surprised? I mean, this is KD, the guy who snaked OKC. This is James Harden, the guy who thinks he's too talented to play defense, and Kyrie, who was always a locker room problem and cared about his personal interests more than team success. However, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you never miss one of my uploads. I'm going to be posting a lot more as the NBA season gets going, so be sure to check out my channel for those. With that being said, I'll see you in the next one.